All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a presentation first from the MDAH education team. So you've been listening to me chat. You're going to listen to me chat a little bit longer. But along with me will be our outreach programs coordinator, Miss Marema Harris, who has been with us for a couple of years now and does great work. If you take advantage of any of our traveling trunks, which you'll hear about shortly, she is who is in charge of that, and you've worked with her before. So we're just going to give you a little idea about what we offer here at MDAH. But first, a little icebreaker. Nothing too crazy as far as icebreakers go today. We just want to know, where are you from? Where are you coming from and what do you teach? Put it in the chat box. We'll see which parts of the state have the most participants. So tell us who you are and where you're from. Okay, we got some Ocean Springs, Coast folks showing up. What else we got? Come on. George County, okay. World and US and Florence. Okay, some more Florence. Okay, got a little Florence contingent. Okay, some Madison County folks showing up. Northwest Rankin, Greenville. Okay, we got a good little spread going on here. 5th grade, okay, that's good. Actually, we made sure to accommodate, especially with one of our sessions, with our teacher panel in session 2, we made sure to accommodate and have a teacher on board who has taught the topic at those lower grade levels. So you will not be left out today with the 5th grade education. Jackson Librarian, okay. All right, 8th to 12th history, covering the whole gamut there. All right, well, that's a good amount, good spread of people throughout the state. So glad y'all could join us yet again. If you see anybody from your area that you don't know or you want to collaborate with, you now know where they're from and what they teach. So feel free to reach out to them and, make some connections here. All right, without any further ado, one quick thing that I did forget to mention this morning, we will post an interest sheet in the chat throughout this session that you can sign up for several different things that we offer here at the department, including Mississippi History Day, to be put on the listserv for that. Or if you're interested in that, so that you can join us for Mississippi History Day. It's a great program we'll talk about shortly, as well as a couple of other things, but we will talk about those as we go. All right, Marema, if you will click us to the next slide.
All right. All right, so as Al said, I am Marema Harris, the Outreach Programs Coordinator. So I've talked with a few of you regarding trunks or registration issues. So we do offer a lot of digital and hands-on resources at the archives, but one of the ones I'm going to speak about today is our Learning Lanyards. So Learning Lanyards, they have been around the department for around 7 years now, but they recently went under a renovation where we did a complete rehaul. So lanyards are 2-page discussion guides that help students navigate our online MDAH digital archives and help students analyze primary sources. So lanyards are a really good resource if you want to introduce analyzing primary resources to your students, or if you try to introduce and they're not really grasping it. It's a good step-by-step process. So these lanyards contain 2 versions, a student version that doesn't contain answers, and also a teacher's version that does contain answers along with relevant state standards. So right now we have topics that range from the 1927 flood to Freedom Summer. And these are just a couple of images. One is from the Freedom Summer flood. I think this is from the Mississippi State Sovereignty Commission, and then the Mississippi State Department of Health.
Along those same lines, we now have our digital snapshots, which is a joint venture between us and the University of Southern Mississippi, their digital humanities group there. This is similar to the lanyards in that it is primary source analysis, but where it differs is if you don't want your students or don't need your students to actually get their feet into the digital archives, going through the collections, et cetera. If you just want a standalone website that has a selection of images or documents, thereby a snapshot, as well as some lesson plans and educator resources, that's what the snapshots are for. They follow a more central narrative, a little less open-ended, and have contextual essays and the like that students and teachers can learn from and use in the classroom. With both of these, they both have educational materials that are included, but you are also free. We made them open-ended enough where you are free to craft your own lessons and resources around them. So feel free to just use the resources if you need them, or use our lesson plans that we've crafted as well if those are what you need. So really up to how you need to use them in the classroom. The snapshots right now, we have a couple of different options. We have the Sovereignty Commission. We have the anti-slavery alphabet, which is a great option. So there's 4 currently that you can go check out. The link is in the chat, as well as the link to the Lagniappe. So feel free to check out our snapshots and use those in your classroom.
All right, so another online resource that we offer is our Mississippi History Now website. So the Mississippi History Now website was actually started in 2000 by the Mississippi Historical Society. If you're not familiar with the Historical Society, they produce a historical journal with articles published by distinguished scholars that tell the story of Mississippi history. They have an annual meeting where historians and members of the community come together and reflect on the state's history, and they offer other professional development opportunities. So the Mississippi History Now website, it recently also underwent a complete renovation where MDAH staff reviewed over 160 articles and worked to ensure that the website was a lot more user-friendly. So the site provides a variety of historical essays on various areas of Mississippi history, and they also contain lesson plans that accompany these essays to help incorporate the material into your classroom. Okay, so as me and Al both mentioned, our traveling trunk program, and something I've spoke with a lot of you about. This is one of our more utilized resources for our K through 12 classroom. So if you're not familiar with our traveling trunk program, please do get familiar because it's a very great resource. It is a fun way to bring history into your classroom. We currently have 3 different trunks in rotation. They contain lessons that follow current standards, activities, and hands-on artifacts. These trunks touch on so many different standards that a lot of different cross-curricular teachers and disciplines use these. It's not just for social studies teachers. We have a lot of different ELA teachers, music teachers, arts teachers that reserve these trunks as well. These trunks are free of charge. The only cost is if you do decide to get it shipped, you will have to pay to get the ship back. But that ranges, I think the most anyone has ever had to spend was $40. So the current trunks that we have in rotation are our Walter Anderson trunk, and we have that in an elementary and a high school version. We have our Mississippi River trunk, and then we also have our Bilford Comfort Manship House trunk.
I should probably unmute before I start talking. We go then from Marema's Baby to mine, Mississippi History Day. Mississippi History Day is based around primary source research for students. And it's a program that really fuels student creativity that fits both national and state standards and provides some unique travel opportunities as well. So what History Day is there's an annual theme. Students pick a topic that fits around that theme, and it can be wide ranging. The only real kind of informal rule is that the topic needs to be at least 25 years old, so that way that it can show impact that has happened since the event or the person or what have you. But other than that, the only restriction on topics is really the restrictions that the teachers put on their own students based on the class or based on what they're studying. Otherwise, it is wide open, and we've seen projects that really run the gamut from traditional history to I had a student once when I was still in the classroom that did how Star Wars changed the entertainment industry. So there's really a lot of options for students to get creative with their topics, but also how they present them. They can do a traditional paper, but there's also opportunities to do documentaries, websites, exhibits, and performances. So students can really present their research in a way that best fits their style and their strengths. So it's a great opportunity. We're really trying to grow the program here in Mississippi. So if this is something you think you would want to bring to your classroom, please let us know. It'll be on that interest sheet and we can reach out and find a way to get you started. Even if you don't want to jump head on in this year, if nothing else, sign up to judge with us. So that way you can experience the program, see what students are able to do with this, and then bring that into your classroom if it's something you're interested in. And as I mentioned, there's travel opportunities as well. And unfortunately, it's already closed for this year, but it's pretty much an annual thing that History Day offers an opportunity for students and teachers to apply to study different facets of World War II throughout the world. And when I mean study throughout the world, I literally mean that. We had a student teacher team from Starkville last year that over this past summer went to Hawaii to study World War II in the Pacific Theater. I went with a student to Normandy to study the Normandy invasion. This is something that History Day offers every year pretty much. I think they've taken a one-year lull occasionally, but it's been pretty consistent that they offer one of these programs every year. So keep an eye out for that as well. You do not have to have participated in History Day before to do those, but it does help your chances if you have participated or are participating. And just some examples where I had those images on there. First was a example of one of the exhibits, just kind of a trifold board that had images and text that mimicking somewhat of a museum exhibit. There's word counts that students have to meet, so that way it's not too text heavy, but they can include documents, they can include images. As I said, a really good chance for students to be creative in how they present their research. And then this picture is our student teacher team from Starkville at the wall at the Punch Bowl in Hawaii. Commemorating their fallen soldier that they studied who died somewhere in the Pacific Theater during World War II that was from Mississippi.
Okay, so that pretty much sums up the majority of our educational resources, but we are always in the process of renovating and creating more. So I will touch on our exciting field trip program shortly, but please follow us on social media channels to stay updated with new resources and more professional development opportunities that we will offer through MDAH and some of our networking organizations. If you ever have any questions, please send an email to outreachprograms@mdah.ms.gov. I do manage that email, but if I don't have the answer to something, I promise I will get the answer any way I can. So if you have any questions, concerns about anything, literally just email me and I will get you your answer.
And now to close out our section and to give you a nice segue into Ms. Sarah Grantham, who is one of the educators at the two Mississippi museums. We're going to talk a little bit about field trips. And on my end, I'm just going to talk about the opportunities that we offer for field trips. I'm going to leave the content and the like up to her. What we do offer for field trips through our field trips coordinator, Ms. Stephanie King, who is on the line as well. She's hidden, but she is with us. Is the opportunity for you to qualify for free field trips to the two Mississippi museums. If you are a Title I school in the state of Mississippi, we can give you tickets for your class to come to the two Mississippi museums. Depending on how far you are from Jackson, we can also potentially cover travel as well as potentially cover meals as well. My apologies. So there's some really good opportunity to really help remove all the barriers that may be in place for you to come to the two museums and experience really Smithsonian quality museums right here in Jackson. And to learn more about those and the field trips themselves, I will give it away to Ms. Sarah Grantham.
All right, thank you, Al. So I'm going to share my presentation so we can get started talking about the school tours that we do at the two Mississippi museums. So this is a picture of the two Mississippi museums. On the right side of the building is the Museum of Mississippi Civil Rights. And then on the left side of the museum is the Museum of Mississippi History. And when we talk about school tours at the two Mississippi museums, we're talking really about attending both museums. So the things that we have available, we have a variety of experiences. You see from this picture, this is me giving a tour in the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum to a group of first graders. And so the experiences that we offer are doing just one museum with a visit. So you can either do a 2-hour experience with a curator like myself or one of my coworkers guiding your class throughout either the Museum of Mississippi History or the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. And as an added bonus to the Civil Rights Museum, we have an opportunity for your students to sit in this big circular room you see in this picture and speak to Mr. Hezekiah Watkins, who works for the museum and was a freedom rider. So getting to hear firsthand from his experiences, really an impactful experience on students. And then of course, if you want to have a busy jammed packed day, we can do both museums in a day. So we'd have one museum, maybe take a brief break for lunch if that's part of our schedule, and then do the other museum together. These tours are kind of our overview experiences. If you're getting ready to start talking about civil rights or getting started with Mississippi history, they're a good intro into the subjects as we'll move through pretty quickly. There's 8 galleries in each museum, so we spend about 10 minutes in each one, just giving students a basic overview into this history before you would cover it in detail in the classroom. But if you want something that fits a little bit more to what you're specifically studying, we have our theme tours that we offer. So part of our theme tours, they were developed out of the virtual tours that we started doing in the COVID pandemic. So as we moved museum online, being closed for COVID, we developed these virtual tours. And so because it's hard to move a computer and a camera throughout the museum, we decided to create these theme tours. So focusing on a specific aspect of history, such as Mississippi statehood. So we were staying in one gallery, talking about in specific detail Mississippi statehood, being a territorial period and moving into how Mississippi became a state and how that impacts the state's history. And we cover a variety of tours. I saw that Shira put in the chat a link to where all of those themes are written out. And now that we're transitioning back into being in-person tours, we thought it was a great time to start moving those experiences in person as well. So we do offer those theme tours as a 2-hour experience with a curator and a class within the museum. So it's about an hour and a half tour through the museum. So spending a little bit more time in the galleries as we move through on a specific subject. And then we take them back to our classroom in the museum campus to have a activity or a guided discussion with the curator in that space. So here is just an example of all of the virtual field trips or the theme topics that we offer right now. So you can see on the left-hand side of the screen is the ones that are specifically within the Museum of Mississippi History. And then on the right side of the screen are the ones that are more focused in the civil rights movement. But these museums are really in conversation with each other. So some of these tours do involve switching back and forth between museums as they are both parts of Mississippi history. So here's an example of what a theme tour would look like, just to give you an example of what we do. So we really want it to be an interactive experience and really fit it into where you are in your curriculum, in your classroom, in your lesson planning. So the way we've designed these theme tours is we have pre-visit materials. So using other department resources to get your students started and ready to be part of this tour, as it really is an interactive experience. So for this tour, talking about civics is designed with a government class in mind. We use the Learning Lanyap from the World War I Statement of Service. So prior to visiting the museum, we'd have your class do this. Maybe if you're coming to visit the museum on Wednesday, you might do this on Monday or Tuesday to really prep your class for coming on Wednesday. You would use the Learning Lanyap, answer the questions that are a part of it, really to start your students thinking about this stuff. And then once they get to the museum, this one is through the Civil Rights Museum. And so as we move throughout all of the galleries, we're going to be focusing specifically on how civic duties and civil service is part of the civil rights story. So talking about experiences in World War I and World War II, being able to serve on a jury, being able to vote, all of these things. And then we'll go back to the classroom to do a mock election to really start talking about specific ideas of civil service and stuff. So we actually have a poll that we're going to put up to kind of show you what that mock election experience would be looking like, and then what we would use to start that conversation in the classroom. So we can put the poll up. All right, so the question that I would like y'all to answer is, should we abolish the draft? So it has to do with civics and, our civic duty, serving on a jury, being a part of the draft selection service for military service is a part of this. So I think the poll should be up if I can get some answers in there. All right, I see we got a couple of answers in the chat. All right, so we're getting some different answers in the chat, and that's the whole point of this exercise with students. We want to show them that you can have a variety of opinions on different subjects. And what this would do is we want to do this, and then we, tally it up. What's the group average? Who votes yes? Who votes no? And really start that discussion on, why did you vote the way that you vote? What is the thought behind it? And how does this impact civil service? What does this have to do with civics? And if we feel this way about this thing, how do we feel about jury duty? How do we feel about, if we don't abolish it, should women be part of the draft also? And starting that conversation with students in the classroom to really get them working on their understanding of civics and how it affects our daily life, and how it's a large part of the civil rights movement, that, things like the draft and things like jury duty are a huge part of the fight for civil rights. That, when you're serving on a jury, it's supposed to be a jury of your peers. But if you're not part of the, voting registration block, you can't be served, drawn to serve on a jury duty. So that's really starts this conversation. And this tour in particular is geared towards high school students. As I said, it was for a government class, but our other theme tours are scalable to any age range, and really fit with different standards. We, designed all of these things with state standards in mind. So really looking at what students are learning in their certain grade levels, and understanding where they're at in the classroom. So this is really a collaborative process with teachers as well. We love to get feedback on those sorts of things after those tours, to make sure that everyone's getting out of it what they want to get out of it. And you can see in the picture of the slideshow in the corner, that is an example of a voting machine that is in the museums. So we also have some additional special programming. So there are unique experiences throughout the year that add on to the classroom tour experience. So some of them fall within specific months. So the picture you see here is from just last month, the Native American Heritage Day that we had in November. And we have a really close relationship with the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. So this is really a partnership event where we bring them in as the bearers of their own culture to teach these things to students. So this day, we had 6 school groups come in and go through these experiences, in addition to going through the museums and the tours. So some of the things that they were shown by the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians were the social dances that they do. We had beading and basket making demonstrations. We had a stickball demonstration, allowing the kids to be part of that outside on our grassy quad. And then we also had a culture presentation put on by the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians explaining the history of their culture and how they are a society that's still around today. They're maintaining their culture. And it was a really impactful experience for students to recognize that they may have Choctaw students in their classroom and learning a little bit more about their culture and about the peoples who lived in Mississippi before we came. So another example of this would be Black History Month in February. So we're in the process of planning this right now for this upcoming February. We're booking school groups right now for February. And what we have planned is that we are going to invite civil rights veterans to come to the Civil Rights Museum and do a little presentation, talk with students about their experience serving in the civil rights movement and how the civil rights movement is something that is continuing till today. Of course, we have Mr. Hezekiah Watkins, who works in the museum with us every day, but bringing in some other veterans. So we have a variety of experiences to talk to students with. And then we're also developing specific tours to celebrate Black history through both museums. Some other months that we're hoping to have some stuff for is going to be Women's History Month in March. So thinking specifically of different women that are important to Mississippi's history in both museums, thinking of women like Fannie Lou Hamer in the Civil Rights Museum and different women in the Mississippi History Museum as well. Something we do in the Civil Rights Museum is flash tours for civil rights veterans' birthdays. So some examples there of what we've done recently is like for Fannie Lou Hamer. So on her birthday, we offered 2 flash tours free of charge so that, we could focus specifically on her birthday and what she brought to the Mississippi Civil Rights Movement and how she affected Mississippi history. We've also done this for Emmett Till and Medgar Evers and many others. Something else that we offer that's part of the Mississippi History Museum is the Artifact Washing Day. So we team up with our archaeology group who normally works downstairs in the museum, taking care of artifacts, working with Native American groups to repatriate cultural objects, but they bring some of their collections objects upstairs, and we teach students about archaeology, about caring for these objects, about what an archaeological dig might look like, and about how we are gentle in cleaning artifacts to have them stored for long-term care. So it really gives students a hands-on opportunity after they've walked through all of the museum, they've done their tour and they've seen a lot of these artifacts, then getting to see some pieces of those that they're able to actually handle and clean in a way that the objects that had been put in the museum were cleaned before they were displayed. So getting really to learn kind of the behind the scenes process to what the museum looks like. All right, so I'm really going to open it up now. If there's any questions, I would love for y'all to put them in the chat. Any questions about tours, any questions about our special programming, or if y'all have any ideas of specific topics y'all like to see us develop for the theme tours, I'd love to hear about them and answer them if I can. I see Jenna is asking about archaeology info for bringing students for that experience. It's definitely going to be something that would be put into the teachers' blasts that get put out, so we can make sure that the next time that we're planning a washing day, that we will make sure that gets sent out and is always posted about on all of our social media as well.
All right, well, thank you, Sarah. You can stop sharing the screen, I guess.
Yep.
Okay, so just some. What'd you say?
Questions in the chat.
Oh, there was some questions in the chat.
So Bryson's question first, does the service we provide include pre-unit lessons, collaborative experience with teachers. It currently doesn't. Currently, my team is who's developing these pre-units and these tour things with the Department of Education. But we definitely would be interested in getting that feedback from teachers, learning what they're hoping to have, or if they know of stuff that is related to these themes that would help. We would definitely be interested in that. Can these tours handle 100 students? Yes, we can. The average tour is typically a little bit smaller. We typically like to have about 30 to 40 to each staff member, giving us a little bit more individual experience with students, getting to be able to talk to them, answer their questions, making sure that they're able to be heard by us. But we have definitely handled tours of upwards of 160. Are these tours only for students? What about community groups such as Scouts? They're mostly for students, but we also have offered tours and events for non-school groups. And that would be something that might be a little bit different in terms of what you would sign up for. Being that it's a community group, you wouldn't necessarily qualify for any of the Title I stuff that Al was mentioning. But definitely we've done college groups. We've done family reunion groups in the past. The sign-up process would be the only thing that would maybe look a little bit different. Are there any other questions? All right, if not, thank y'all for listening, and I hope to see y'all at the museum sometime soon.
All right, so thank you again, Sarah. So as we mentioned earlier, we'll be on the outreach email all day. If anyone has any questions or concerns, or if you lost a link to the sessions for today, one of our techs will repost a link to the next session shortly. If you didn't sign in for session 1, please sign in for that once that link is reposted as well. Our next session starts at 10:20. But right now we will have our field trip coordinator, Stephanie King, give a little bit more in-depth explanation about field trips.
So good morning. The Field Trips program is open to all public schools in the state of Mississippi who are interested in bringing their students to the museums. If you have any questions about the program, please feel free to send me an email, and I would be more than happy to explain how you are eligible to register. All Mississippi public schools are eligible for admission and transportation as of right now, and as far as meals, depending on your distance from the museums, we could possibly talk about whether or not you'd be eligible for meals. As far as group sizes go, that question depends kind of mostly on what the museums can accommodate, as far as Sarah was mentioning about your experience for your age, and depending on what they would be able to accommodate for the experience that you're trying to curate for your students. So if the text would put my contact information into the chat, please feel free to reach out to me, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you have as far as the scholarships go for the admission and transportation scholarships. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, again, if you didn't sign in for session 1, please make sure you sign in. Again, the next session starts at 10:20. Once again, we'll keep you in the waiting room until the session begins, and the link to that session will be in your email. And also, you can reach out to the outreach account if you just don't have it for some reason. And if anyone wants to hang around and ask any general questions, the MDH staff will be here for a couple more minutes. All right, thanks everyone.